And I am not sorry for the things I did do.
I never ever see anybody like you again.
This is the worst case ever in my life, and I have seen some horrors.
4 evil killers who showed no remorse in court. Number 1, Ronnie O'Neal. Ronnie O'Neal was convicted for fatally shooting his girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, murdering their 9-year-old daughter by striking her multiple times with a hatchet, and also stabbing their 8-year-old son before pouring gasoline all over the house and setting it on fire. He was arrested just as he was fleeing the burning house. The son escaped, but was severely wounded and suffered from burns. In 2018, the judge sentenced him to 3 consecutive life sentences, plus 90 years without the possibility of parole.
As count 1, Mr. O'Neal, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life in prison with a minimum mandatory of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Following the jury's life in prison decision for the killer, O'Neal made a mockery of the courtroom by representing himself in the double murder trial and yelling at the jury, as well as blaming his late girlfriend Kenyatta for the murders. The late Miss Barron had originally called 911, screaming before suddenly hanging up. About 8 minutes later, another call came in from O'Neal, who claimed to be attacked by some white demons. After his arrest, O'Neal was psychologically cleared to represent himself in court, where he cross-examined his son, who explained everything that happened. O'Neal also accused the prosecution of fabricating evidence and had no remorse whatsoever for what he did. Before Judge Michelle Sisko's sentencing, there was a very emotional testimony by the victim's family. Kenyatta Barron's mother, Carrie Lloyd, said she was disappointed with the jury's verdict and wanted O'Neal to face the death penalty. She was in tears for most of her testimony. O'Neal, dressed in a red inmate jumpsuit and shackled, stood up, turned to the gallery, looked at Carrie Lloyd, and said he would not apologize for his actions. "I am not sorry for something I did not do," he started quietly, before raising his voice to shout, "and I am not sorry for the things I did do."
And I am not sorry for the things I did do.
After O'Neal was found guilty at his sentencing, the judge went on to say that it was the worst case she's ever seen.
This is the worst case ever in my life, and I have seen some horrors.
O'Neal's son was adopted by the detective who cared for him on the night of the murders. Number 2, Randall Moore. Sheila Lynch has been waiting for this day for more than a year, ever since Randall Moore killed her daughter, Therese Ann. Moore kidnapped, raped, and murdered his estranged wife on November 11, 2009, just 1 month after she had left Moore and filed a protective order against him. Moore also shot a Des Moines police officer by the name of Todd Rowland as he responded to the cries for help coming from the apartment the couple once shared. Moore, after he got the opportunity to make a statement, tried to justify murdering the mother of his son. "I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Therese Ann's death. It could have all been prevented if you had let me see my kid. Now you are never going to see her again," he said to the Lynch family seated behind him. He did apologize to his family and Officer Rowland, but he added, "Todd, I could have killed you. I could have shot you 25 times. I chose not to." His unremorseful remarks drew gasps from those in the courtroom. He was then sentenced to 3 life sentences for the crimes against Therese Ann Lynch and 25 years in prison for shooting Officer Rowland. The sentences were to be served consecutively to underscore the severity of his crimes and disregard for the law. "You give new meaning to the word evil. I have never seen anything like you, and I hope I never see anyone like you again. The court doesn't allow me to punish you any more than I am now. If I could, I would," the judge added.
You give a new meaning to the word evil. I've never, ever seen anybody like you. I never ever see anybody like you again. The court doesn't allow me to punish you any more than I'm doing now. If I could, I would.
As the verdict was being read, Moore gave nothing but a slight nod. "What you did to my daughter was evil, hateful, and despicable," said the victim's mother, Sheila Lynch, during the victim's impact statement she read during Moore's sentencing. "You couldn't destroy her spirit, so you took her life instead." She continued, her gaze never wavering from Randall Moore, not even when he interrupted her with, "Read the journals. She hated you. She hated you. You're a loser," he shouted at her.
"Read the journals she wrote. She hated you. She hated you. You're a loser."
Number 3, Keith Ferguson. Keith Ferguson from Kalkaska, Michigan, has pled guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of second-degree murder. As part of the plea deal, all other charges and felony counts were dropped, including kidnapping and carrying explosives. Keith Ferguson, who was 40 at the time, was engaged in a divorce argument with his wife Tiffany Ferguson when he began to suddenly beat her, followed by shooting her in front of 4 of their children and rendering them motherless. He then hauled the children over to Tiffany's parents' house, where he proceeded to fatally shoot his father-in-law, James Weber. After escaping from the scene, Keith Ferguson stormed a nearby house, took the owner of the house hostage, and barricaded himself inside the house. Ferguson was later arrested after a 7-hour standoff with the police. During his plea, the Kalkaska County prosecutor said that Ferguson became agitated and upset, so much so that the judge decided to take a break. He came back after the break and was much calmer. He also disturbed the court a number of times by standing up and yelling, and his attitude and unremorseful appearance baffled everyone in court. Tiffany's best friend gave a victim impact statement during his sentencing, saying that she always felt Keith would hurt his wife. She went further to say that she knew he would kill her one day, but Tiffany never listened to such warnings. She always replied that Keith loves his kids and he will not kill her. When Ferguson was asked about his children, he said he never desired to see or speak to them again, to which the judge responded by saying, "You may not meet the clinical definition of insanity, but there's clearly something fundamentally wrong with you."
May not meet the clinical definition of insanity, but there's clearly something fundamentally wrong with you.
People close to Tiffany Ferguson and James Weber reacted with relief to Keith Ferguson admitting to murder because they felt he would have tried to deny it, possibly to reduce his sentencing. Keith Ferguson was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, to which he responded with, "I will see you all in hell." The 4 kids are currently being taken care of by their grandmother. Number 4, Michael Swanson. At the ages of 47 and 61, respectively, Vicki Bowman Hall and Sheila Myers of Iowa were both innocent gas station clerks with families of their own when they abruptly lost their lives. Vicki Bowman Hall was not even supposed to be working at the Crossroads convenience store, yet she had clocked in anyways after another staff had called in sick. She was working at the register when a young man walked in wearing a ski mask, pointed a gun in her direction, and demanded cash as well as cigarettes, to which she immediately complied with. She did it without raising any alarms to be as safe as possible, but he still shot her in the face with his .40 caliber weapon before leaving with $31 and cigarettes. An hour and a half later, at about 10:30 p.m., he struck again at a convenience store in Humboldt, similarly shooting Sheila Myers. While she died at the scene, Vicki died at the Kossuth Regional Health Center. Sheila died at the scene. Hours after the shootings took place, investigators were able to identify that the assailant they were looking for was driving a Jeep Grand Cherokee with Minnesota license plate. He was swiftly caught, after which it came to light that Michael Swanson had taken his mother's Jeep and credit cards in the middle of the night to make his way to Iowa before stepping into the 2 stores with the intention to kill. He refused to divulge some of the details about the shootings, but he did admit that shooting the women in the face made him feel powerful. Despite them doing what he asked for without resistance, it meant murder was his actual goal. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of burglary. As Swanson was sentenced, and several times during the court session, he smiled and laughed.
Cold-blooded murder.
It was later discovered that his mother had been trying in vain for years to convince others that her child has devastatingly violent tendencies. His psychologist had even proclaimed him a lost cause. He was given 2 life sentences, and 4 years into his sentence, he slit another inmate's throat, leaving him with 15 lacerations and stitches.
Prison for the rest of your life.
Michael was then sentenced to an additional 25 years for attempted murder. Which of these evil killers do you find the most unremorseful? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to see more videos like this, please turn on all notifications and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.